Hiya folks, and welcome back to every episode of Phineas and Ferb Reviewed. This time, however, instead of reviewing a specific season of the show, I am reviewing one singular thing. That's right, for this video, I am reviewing the show's TV movie, Phineas and Ferb, Across the Second Dimension. I know many are going to disagree with the statement I am about to make, but I truly believe that the TV movie was the pinnacle of the show's run. That's not to say that it all went downhill after that. In fact, my opinion has nothing to do with the quality of the show itself. See, the movie is when I think the series was most popular, most relevant, and most recognizable. It would go on to run for 4 more years after the movie premiered, and to this day remains prominent in reruns. But unfortunately, the show's recognition began to dwindle, starting with the 4th season. This is for a couple of reasons. Number 1, season 4 was when Disney made the move to permanently rebrand its networks so that Disney Channel was focused on live action stuff and a female demographic, and XD was focused more on animation and a male demographic. Now that seems to be something that's reversing, since Disney Channel is set to add a Hotel Transylvania series and a Tangled series next year, but whatever. And as a result, airings of the show became scarce and new episodes were spread out big time throughout the year 2014. In fact, season 4 took the longest of all the seasons to complete, beginning in December of 2012 and ending in November of 2015. Technically June, but that's semantics. My point is, the movie is when I believe the show reached its highest point, and so it's only appropriate that I celebrate it with its own review. I had debated how exactly I wanted to review this. Should I do it in the middle of season 3? Should I do it at the beginning or at the end of season 3? Should I make it its own separate thing? And so I decided to make this review its own separate thing. Not only does it save me the production code headache, but one of the benefits of making it its own review is I can devote more time to talk in depth about this movie and specific parts I like and dislike. That being said, I'll try to keep it relatively short. Hopefully. So, without further ado, let's dive right into Phineas and Ferb, Across the Second Dimension. Phineas and Ferb discover Perry's double life, encounter Doofenshmirtz, travel to the second dimension, and become thrust into the most dangerous adventure of their lives. So the film opens with Phineas, Ferb, Perry, Candace, and Doofenshmirtz all having been captured by robots and are about to be fed to a giant goosum. This is the opening scene of the movie. I love that this is the opening scene of the movie. It's a perfect example of a technique known as in media res. This just means you start the narrative in the middle of the story instead of the beginning. Not only is it a great technique to use because it mixes things up, but it already gives you a sense that this is not going to be just any ordinary Phineas and Ferb adventure. In fact, by Dan and Swampy's own accord, they wanted the movie to start out like a regular episode before it descended into insanity. And that's exactly what happens. After that scene, we see Phineas and Ferb wake up in the morning and reminisce about the day they adopted Perry. Then they're inspired to play platypus badminton using 2 giant platypus-shaped catapults. A mishap results in the boys getting launched to Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated, where they destroy Dr. Doofenshmirtz's latest invention, his other dimensionator. Of course, because they're so nice and a bit naive, they help him repair it, including a great joke where Phineas points out Doof's self-destruct button, and he finally realizes that building a button like that is completely stupid. And all the while, Perry helplessly has to watch from the sidelines, lest he risks revealing his secret identity and forcing relocation. So they complete the machine, and they go through it, and they end up in the second dimension, where they notice that this dimension's Doofenshmirtz has already taken over Danville. Then after an encounter with second dimension Major Monogram, Doof finds his evil doppelganger, who has an eye patch with a scar that goes over the eye patch for some reason, and they sing a bubbly duet together. I can't tell you how many laughs the song brought me. Not too long after this, Second Dimension Doof puts Phineas and Ferb in harm's way, forcing Perry to step in as Agent P and reveal his identity to his owners. And this is where the movie gets good. See, this is one of the few times throughout the series where we see Phineas legitimately feel any emotion other than optimism and happiness. Here, he's hurt. Like, really, really hurt. Though admittedly, it was the tiniest bit off-putting to see him actually yell at Perry. It's very hard to blame him here. He feels betrayed by his own pet. So much so that he actually disowns Perry midway through the movie, feeling he can't trust him anymore. Watching this again, I was shocked they actually did that. I mean, I know they eventually make up, but still. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I think they overdid the anger just a tad in this movie. Not horrifically, but I was kind of bothered near the end when Perry and Phineas reunite and Phineas says, "So, I guess we can trust you after all. I don't exactly know what it is, but the delivery of that line just feels wrong. Phineas was just proven wrong in his belief Perry doesn't trust him. And that's what he says to Perry? And how he says it? Where's the apologetic tone? Granted, it's a minor complaint, but one I felt necessary to make. Okay, moving on. So after they manage to escape Second Dimension Doof's clutches, they decide to go find their Second Dimension counterparts. Remember, in this dimension, Doof has taken over, so these Phineas and Ferb counterparts don't know what summer vacation is. Luckily, there's a great song that beautifully encapsulates the beauty of the show. Then the Second Dimension Phineas and Ferb take First Dimension Phineas and Ferb to meet their own friends, where we find out they're part of a small group led by Second Dimension Candace, known as the Resistance. As they work to help get them back home, they decide to accompany them on a rescue mission to save Perry. Unfortunately, they get captured, and thus we've come full circle back to the opening shot. They manage to escape after Phineas somehow convinces Perry to trust him, and they fall towards the lava, where they use the other Dimensionator to transport themselves into a new dimension away from the lava. It all leads to them returning back to their dimension, Second Dimension Doof following them and plotting to take over the First Dimension Danville as well. Phineas, Ferb, and friends getting swept into an all-out battle to protect Danville, which includes the most unbelievable show callback I've ever seen in any show, where in order to defeat Second Dimension Doof, Phineas and Ferb are provided exact duplicates of every single big idea they've had done up to that point in the show. Oh, and Second Dimension Doof has a partner, Second Dimension Perry, the boys' pet, who's been converted to a Platyborg and turned evil. So at the end, they defeat him. Phineas realizes he was wrong once Monogram explains to him that revealing his identity triggers a relocation, but that's avoided when everyone agrees to have their memories erased, including Doof, against his will. And of course, Isabella gets in her dream kiss with Phineas just before that happens. I swear that's the greatest troll job of all time in this show. And that's the end of the movie. Or at least the main Phineas and Ferb plot. There's also a Candace plot. Beyond it just being a story where she tries to bust her brothers, she also has a lot of personal stuff she's fighting. She struggles with the idea of Jeremy going to college, and she worries about them growing apart, or her being seen by him as immature. She becomes convinced also that there is some kind of mysterious force out there intentionally interfering with her efforts to bust the boys. So much so that at the end of the movie, just as the boys are defeating Second Dimension Doof, Candace has her mother dragged out of a theater to show her a town that is perfectly normal, and then reacting all happy and stuff at the fact that she failed to bust them, theorizing that it helped save the world. That part is so funny. Basically, her story is not really her fighting to bust her brothers, but her, in essence, fighting adulthood. She thinks she has to grow up fast in order to stay on par with Jeremy, but in the end, she sort of decides, you know what? I might as well enjoy the time I have left as a non-adult. And in general, I really did like seeing this play out. And in a weird way, it was very relatable. It also doesn't get too much focus in this movie, so that's also a plus. But one of the most underrated parts is the conflict that Second Dimension Candace goes through in this movie. Like the First Dimension Candace plot, we don't see so much of it that it overwhelms the main plot, but we see enough of it that it's justified in being its own story. Unlike First Dimension Candace, who's more than eager to bust her brothers, Second Dimension Candace is more than eager to step into the fray and protect her brothers from any harm. That also includes keeping them from participating in the resistance in any meaningful way. From the way her story is presented, it's easy to sympathize with her and her motivations. Even when she intentionally allows First Dimension Phineas and Ferb to get captured, it's all in the name of protecting her own brothers. And she later regrets it and rescues them anyway, sacrificing herself in the process. And then she's rescued later by her own brothers and by Second Dimension Jeremy. It's here that her story kind of comes full circle, at least until Season 4's Second Dimension special, where she starts berating Jeremy for taking her brothers along, and he reveals he didn't know who they were to begin with, and that they pretty much led the charge in rescuing her. And she apologizes and thanks them for rescuing her. Of course, she's not over it entirely. As I said, in the Second Dimension special, Tales of the Resistance, we see her revert somewhat back to her overprotective self. But even with that said, it's still nice to see her be this way, but also realize they can handle their own, especially after Phineas and Ferb broke through to them about Summer. This movie does so many things that I love, and I haven't even talked about the songs all that much. But really, what can I say about them? They're all wonderful. My personal favorites being Brand New Best Friend and Everything's Better with Perry. I think those are two of the best songs in the entire show. What's also really amazing is that apparently this episode was supposed to be an 11-minute episode, and then it spiraled into this epic TV movie. Personally, I'm glad they did that, because first, we already got an 11-minute episode where the boys get mixed up in Perry's double life. It was called Ready for the Bettys, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. But beyond that, it just makes sense to make this a longer special. It's a big storyline. It's kind of like the show's Elephant in the Room. And 11 minutes, hell, not even 22 minutes, would have done this justice. Also, this episode garnered a total of 7.6 million viewers on its debut on Disney Channel. That's a ton of viewers for a Disney show or a Disney movie based off a show. In fact, this movie remains one of the most watched cable TV movies of all time. And I don't think it could go to a more deserving film. The only thing I don't like is that this was put on in cinemas in several other countries, but not the United States. And meanwhile, this show still has a theatrical film in development hell just waiting to break through. Why couldn't this have been a theatrical film? But whatever. In any case, this movie, for what we got from it, was amazing. I loved it then, and I still love it now. Obviously, it gets 6 stars. Back in the day, I was hoping they'd do another TV movie and do a sequel to this, and they did make a sequel, but not as a movie. Just the 22-minute special, Tales of the Resistance. And I'm still waiting for that theatrical movie to come out for the fan base. Well, we may never truly know what the future holds, so never say never. Like I said, the movie will not count towards the season 3 stats because I believe it will unfairly skew the end results. So it's being counted as its own thing. And again, it's totally fine to disagree with my opinion. Now, as far as the season 3 review, well, unfortunately, I can't promise that it'll be out nearly as quickly as season 2 was, but you never know. So, we'll see. Until next time.